Welcome back to the Fingerwag Podcast. I'm your host, Gideon Hertz. I'm joined as always by Jake Foote. What's up, Jake?
How you doing, Gideon? Good to be back.
Gloomy Monday, kind of matching the mood, I think, a little bit.
Yeah,
At least it
100%.
is in the district.
Unfortunate to get your butt kicked last night. I don't think it was a huge surprise given some of the personnel disadvantages you had compared to Carolina. I think the guys played hard, but unfortunately, I've kind of lost a lot of that momentum that you built up through Canada, through the exhibitions, through Clemson, and through Maryland. But yeah, you got to regroup.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it. We're not going to make folks relive the UNC game, but we definitely want to talk about some of the big takeaways that we have. Take stock really as we sit now. There's obviously 2 games left of the non-conference schedule with St. Peter's and Coppin State, but those will come in the middle of the conference schedule as well. So all things looking like you're going to end up 8-3 in the non-con, which we'll talk about, and you've got to reset before you get into the Big East play. But we'll start with the UNC game. Georgetown, of course, drops that 81-61. In it for much, if not all of the first half. I think it was a 5-point lead for UNC at halftime. You felt pretty good without Malik really showing up in that first half. Didn't really have his shot going, but guys were making plays and kind of hanging around. I thought there were some guys who looked really good in that first half. Jeremiah Williams looked like he was back to his old ways. Thought Langston Love popped for the first time in a while. Julius looked good. They come out in the second half, exchange some blows with UNC, go back and forth, and then at about 15 minutes or so, UNC hits 3 straight threes, and we'll talk about that sequence because that was a big one, and that was really the last time you were ever even sniffing the game was ever in doubt. Let's start with your big takeaways, Jake. What for you were sort of your biggest takeaways from that one?
Well, I think, and maybe this is disappointing, but I think he just got beat straight up. Like I don't think there's a lot to look at in terms of like effort or execution and just be like, man, the guys didn't show up. I think they played pretty hard. I think they were pretty well prepared in the first half. I think, if you listen to the announcers, the things that Cooley stressed that they needed to do to give themselves a chance, which was limit turnovers, limit Carolina playing in transition, hold your own on the offense or on the defensive glass. I think they did all that. I think just in a half court basketball game, North Carolina generated a lot better shots and made a hell of a lot more shots. And I think a lot of that had to do with just, how big and skilled Caleb Wilson and Henry Visar were, that it was just really difficult to deal with. But I think another large proportion of that is just, we feel pretty undermanned personnel wise.
Yeah.
We're 100% short of center. We're having a really hard time putting together 40 minutes at that position. And if you talked in the offseason, you would have thought that, a really good Langston Love or some version of a 2 guard was in the mix. And you would have think that DHS would be, your 6th man that can kind of cover for everybody. And I know Love was definitely played his best game, but you were basically missing all 3 of those things
Yeah.
against Carolina. And it just shows that you're just a little undermanned in the talent department, which is just unfortunate because I know we thought we had a lot of depth.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We can talk about the depth, but your depth is contingent on guys playing in the roles that they
100%.
expect to. And you lose Vince, you lose DHS, both guys not playing yesterday. DHS out for personal reasons after being sick. We're hoping for the best for him, wishing him the best, and that he'll be back against St. Peter's. But the results that you've seen, I don't think necessarily indicate that the depth was a lie or that it wasn't there. It's just that you're playing guys in positions where they are not going to succeed. I think really a key example of that is Jaden Ford, who I thought had some good minutes yesterday, but when he's put into a position to play your backup center, he is going to struggle because that's not a role that he excels in. And it's not a role that he's designed to play, but you're forced to play him there. And so the depth gets really, really stretched. It doesn't mean that the depth isn't good, but it means that they are not able to fit into the roles that you would expect.
Yeah, I don't think anybody across the entire front court is playing in the role that you would have thought.
Yeah.
You know, you're asking Julius to try to play 32 minutes, and he's been good. I
Yeah.
really don't have a lot of gripes with him. It's just that you can tell that one, he's probably not in shape to handle that type of workload, especially what they're asking him to do offensively and defensively.
Offensively, yeah.
It's not a passive 32 minutes,
No, he's
and
focal point.
he's having to play without fouling because he knows it's a death sentence the minute he goes to the bench, which is affecting his physicality out there. You just touched upon Fort, but Fort, he can't really be a five. He has to be this 5 to 6 minute a game power forward that comes in when you need to clean the glass a little bit or add some length and athleticism. Caleb, we've touched upon how much we like Caleb, and I'm very much still there. But asking him to be your third scorer in a Power Five conference, 14 months removed from him being kind of a non-regarded 3-star is a pretty big jump to ask. And then we like Zay too. We think he's going to be a really good player, but you're asking him to be a 25 to 30 minute a game starter too right now. So you're right. All four of those guys are probably being asked to be in a little bit bigger roles than we'd like. And if this was a really healthy operation with Vince and DHS in the fold right now, all those guys would probably be just asked a little less of, which would be for the better of everybody.
Yeah. The depth is definitely stretched. I will say, and these are connected, but I do think one of the reasons that you struggled against UNC was on paper you like your matchup at the guard positions with KJ and Malik, and we'll talk about both. I don't think either of them were great. I thought KJ played pretty well, had his moments, but there were a couple of key plays that just are swing plays that don't go the way that you need them to, and the game folds. And I thought Malik was not great. For Coach Cooley after the game in his press conference basically said we lost because our shot discipline was an F minus. He said we took really, 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 really bad shots. Can confirm upon rewatch, lots of really, 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 really bad shots, and not the type of shots that are wild. They are just shots that stress your offense and stress your defense because they're shots that you can get later. They're shots that are out of rhythm. They're shots without moving the ball. And I put a lot of that on both Malik and KJ, but a lot of it on Malik for sure.
Yeah, I do too. But at the same time, and the quality of shot generation was bad yesterday. And those two guys, especially in the second half, were big culprits. But at the same time, there's the personnel
Yeah.
doesn't surround those guys where they can really dish it and somebody else can create a shot for somebody else for either for them or the other two guys out there. And Julius played pretty well yesterday, but he's going to be neutralized in a game like that where his opponent is one of the best defensive centers in the sport in Visar. And, you know, too many times, I don't know if it's that we have to run some more aggressive downhill stuff offensively, but too many times they are asking Malik or KJ just to kind of do something on their own, and you end up taking 15 mid-range shots in the game. You only made 3 of them. That's a lot of empty possessions on stuff that you don't want to be taking in the first place. I'll give Malik's kind of like an F for me on that game. I think that's about as bad as Malik can play, and I'm less mad about the missing shots and more mad about how frustrated he got, and he stopped playing as a point guard,
Yeah.
and started playing a little for Malik Mack, and we're not good enough for that to happen. But I'll give KJ a little bit of a pass because the reason it was so close in the first half was KJ just made a ton of things happen on his own on both sides of the ball that, it's hard to criticize that kid's effort. And you kind of have to give him the freedom to take a couple bad ones because he's the best you got on that end.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think I mentioned sort of the three the three possession stretch in the second half where UNC broke it open with 3 straight threes. That starts with Georgetown down 6 and off of an inbound, KJ taking an early in the shot clock pull-up 3.
Yeah.
Dixon comes down, hits a 3 on the other end, then a pull-up mid-range which is just that's not a shot I want anybody taking. Then Mac just completely loses the ball, and in between all of those, UNC is hitting those threes. And you're absolutely right. They're not in this game without KJ in the first half, and yeah, I will gladly take a couple of those bad shots. I think more often than not, both KJ and Malik, when they're stepping in and taking pull-ups from 3 early in the shot clock, it's just not a shot that I want.
I would agree, yeah. But there was 30 minutes of evidence yesterday that they weren't generating anything
Yeah,
to the alternative. They shot 8 of 36 from the field in the second half, 1 of 14 from 3. They had nothing doing.
yeah.
The minute that game got more into a half court game in the second half, and basically North Carolina understood what we were trying to do, we didn't have a single answer.
Anything slightly positive that stuck out from your game? I mentioned a couple of things that caught my eye, but was there anything that you were pleasantly surprised by?
So I think a couple things, to be honest. I think Julius with every game looks more and more ready for high major hoops.
Really
I'd
does.
love for it to be in a 18 to 20 minute a game role where he can just be himself rather than this guy that, is totally necessary for any sort of success out there. But he's very early in his developmental path. He's a de facto freshman, and he looks a really good player. And you can look across the way to a guy like Visar, who is probably, that's probably what you hope Julius looks like in 24 months. That same type of big, skilled guy, but the game starts moving really slow, and he just is always making the right decisions. I'd also say it was a step in the right direction in basically welcoming Jeremiah and or Langston into these larger depth roles because you're going to need those guys. And they both played well, and Jeremiah was definitely up for it physically. He they played their only good stretches of defense of the game when he was out there. I
Yeah.
think he was 0.91 points per possession against in his 32 possessions. In the 40 possessions he sat, North Carolina scored 1.43, which is
Jeez.
like basically just dumping the ball in the hoop.
Yikes.
And I'd also say that, like, I don't know, the first 12 minutes were encouraging, that
For
they
sure.
just like at least didn't lay down. Again, what I stressed a couple minutes ago is just I don't think they were beat on effort and execution. I just think a better team had better players, was playing at home, and just wore them out over the course of 40 minutes.
Yeah. A a team that has lost program that has lost, I think, 14 non-conference games at home over some ridiculous amount of years. Like it's a tough place to go win
Yeah,
unless you're
that's
firing on all cylinders, and Georgetown just isn't right now by virtue of both the personnel that they have and the way that they're playing a little bit. But I agree. I think the first 12 minutes were really, really encouraging. I thought the first half, frankly, was pretty encouraging. I felt pretty good about where they sat with the idea that if they play a really, really, really good to perfect second half, they might have a chance to steal it. They did not come anywhere near a good to perfect second half, but it was not lack of effort or lack of focus for sure.
yeah, they played them, I wouldn't say it was even, but they played them pretty close to even for 25 minutes. I think it was the under 16 mark in that second half. It was a 3-point game.
Yeah.
You were right there. If Malik doesn't start that game 3 for 10 or 2 for 10, and he starts the game 4 for 8, and he settles down a little bit, it's probably a totally different game offensively. If Julius doesn't pick up his fourth foul at the 15-minute mark of the second half and has to sit for 6 minutes in a 6-minute stretch where you get your ass totally kicked, it might be a different game.
Yeah.
Caleb wasn't good, but Caleb played the whole game in foul trouble too. Another guy that, even when he's not good, he's extremely vital for this to be functional.
Yeah.
They were -10 in his 30 minutes. in the 10 minutes that he sat, they were another minus 10 and allowed 1.45 points per possession in those 10 minutes. They just, if they're missing any combination of Malik, KJ, Caleb, and Julius, or if any of those guys are off their game, it's just, ooh, they're just not good right now.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just frustrating because of how good they played the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah. I in those stats and what we saw from them and what we've seen from them the past couple of games since Vince went out. And I think, it is not, we shouldn't gloss over that since Vince has gone out, DHS has also been largely out of the lineup. So they're missing almost completely two of their top six guys. There is a slight silver lining to me that when they have their guys and they are playing in the roles that they are intended to play in, they actually are pretty good. Now, will they ever get those guys back into the roles that they're intended to play in? Who knows? And you're going to have to figure it out regardless. But there's some indication that they are in a stressful part of their schedule because of both things outside of their control and the way that they've responded to them. But coming into the Big East schedule now, they can start to find the pieces again. Maybe they can settle back into what they were early in this year.
Yeah, they 100% have a shot to regroup, and there's plenty of basketball left. But yeah, at the same time, if you only get a 30, 31 game sample size to show a committee that you're worthy of an NCAA tournament spot. And if you have a really horrible 3 week stretch, a really bad 6 game stretch, that's 20% of your season.
Yeah.
It's hard to overcome that. And if you do, you know, not that this game was ever one that you circled at the beginning of the schedule as one that you think you're going to win, but when you lose that Dayton game, you're going to have to pick up that game somewhere else.
Yep.
And the games that you're going to have to pick up are these road quad one games. So again, I'm not expecting them to win that game, but with every moment you kind of don't take advantage of, it just makes your margins thinner and thinner, which then you question, is this team talented enough to execute when those margins are that thin?
And we'll talk about where we stand in the Big East. I think that was my biggest takeaway from this one was actually just, gosh, I would feel so much better if they just pulled out that Dayton game.
Yeah, 100%. That's why, and we were saying on this podcast that it would have just been house money, which is
Yeah.
exactly true. Even if Vince wasn't around, if you had in reality 9 non-conference wins in the back of your pocket and just had 2 games that people knew that you were probably going to get your butt kicked and it didn't really matter what happened, you'd be totally fine. But
Yep.
now you got to find that Dayton win somewhere else, and you lose that collective momentum and belief that you gained, which is going to make these Marquette and Xavier games even harder, especially sans Iwachukwu.
Yeah. Before we get into that, a couple of other sort of burning questions that I had. I think you saw it in this one. Fort put in a position to play that backup 5 is really, really stretched defensively. I don't know if you can go to Seal in Big East play, but I wouldn't mind seeing a good chunk of him against St. Peter's just to see what that looks like. Do you think it's worth showing a little bit of Seal at the backup 5 just to play a unit that has a center on the floor?
Yeah, 100%. Because I like Fort, but I don't think that there's any evidence that they've got a shot with him playing the 5 out there. So I'll run through some stats here quickly, and this is bye games discarded. This is across the 5 non-bye games: Maryland, Clemson, Dayton, Miami, and Carolina. Julius played 208 possessions, pretty substantial sample size.
Yeah.
And in those 208 minutes, we went 219 to 220, got outscored by 1 point. So he held his own out there. It's a little mixed because he was plus 22 in the 2 wins and then was definitely less good in those last 3, but they were asking way too much of him. So,
Yeah.
and we were also Miami and Carolina were a significantly better opponent. So I'm going to give Julius a pretty well-regarded passing grade in what they asked of him over that 5-game stretch. And to be honest, I think it was better than I thought he could do. Um,
Yeah.
Offensively, he looks like he's turning a corner, which we knew he had it in him. And defensively, he's really held his own. In those 5 games, opponents shot 41% at the rim, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
Where we were undone was 63. Opponents shot 63% from mid range while he was on the floor.
Mm,
In the Miami game, they shot 12 of 14. In the
yeah.
Carolina game, they shot 12 of 17. Now the question is that just really bad luck and really bad variance that these teams are shooting dynamite from mid range, or is your defense so weak that you're funneling the shots that you would normally be funneling guys to because they're difficult? You're funneling them to because these guys can get them so easily.
Yeah.
And that would be concerning, but less concerning on Julius's part, more concerning on the rest of the group. Now, when we switch to Fort here, Fort played 49 possessions across those 5 games, so about 20% of the time of Julius. We got outscored by 17 points in
Yeah.
those 49 possessions, which is just a straight ass kicking.
Yeah.
49 possessions is 25 to 30 minutes worth of real game time. And we didn't play any defense over that stretch. We allowed 1.22 points per possession. Fort, similar to Julius, was pretty good at defending the rim.
Yeah.
Opponents only shot 44% from the rim while he was out there. But this group, when Fort was on the floor, was really undone by the 3-point shot.
Yeah.
Opponents shot just around 50% when he was out there, which I do think he's somewhat at fault for, because when he is out there as the 5, it feels like there's just no organization. It feels like they're winging it. They're playing a lot of that junk zone. And they, even in the Carolina game, they were playing more Langston and Jeremiah alongside Mac, which pushed KJ into the bottom of the 2-3, where one, he's probably never been asked to play that his entire life. 2, it eliminates all of his ability to gamble.
Yeah.
And 3, he has to basically stay home on that left corner 3, which he had absolutely no interest in doing. And it just, they surrendered a bunch of open shots, and they have done so over the course of the 5 games where they've asked Fort to play the 5.
Yeah.
Now, to circle back to Seal, do I think Seal's ready? No. Do I think it's going to look pretty bad if he's out there? Yes. But I think it looks pretty bad when Fort's out there, and I see no harm in giving the kid a run out and seeing if he can just throw a body, because what they really need to do is regain some identity of physicality on the defensive end, and they're lacking it right now.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And to me, it's almost as much about what you do to help Fort as anything. Because as you said, he's not gonna survive in that role. But I when he was playing the 4 next to Julius, I think early in the second half, late in the first half, and actually was matching up against Caleb Wilson a little bit. He looked comfortable. He looked pretty good, and that's his role, a athletic slashing 4 next to kind of a more solid anchor. I think to get the most out of him, I would consider playing him with Julius and then maybe staggering Seal with Caleb a little bit, or something like that, just to get Fort in a position where he's playing his best and have that center on the floor. Because you're right about the zone. We'll talk about it for sure.
And that's how Ford found success in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
He didn't play a lot in that Maryland game, but he changed that game in the Maryland game when he was played alongside a center, and it was his responsibility. He had zero responsibility outside of just go get the basketball.
Yep.
Somebody's driving down the lane, go get the ball. If the ball's up on the offensive or defensive glass, go get the ball. When you're asking a kid like that who's only played 5 to 10 college basketball games to play out of position, in a position where he's probably never played before, in a position that really requires a lot of thinking, you're just asking too much of the kid.
And you're cutting him off at the knees for sure. The mid-range stuff is interesting to me because on one hand, I think I mentioned this over Twitter. I think the Caleb Wilson's mid-range game is perhaps the best weapon I've seen out of the vaunted freshmen this year. The Cam Boozers, AJ DeBansas, Caleb Wilson. That mid-range game is just like deadly. That's an NBA ready game.
Yeah, he's
So
awesome.
I'd chalk that up to some of it. But on the flip side, you mentioned they were giving up mid-rangers against Miami, gave up a lot of mid-rangers against UMBC too. So I'm not ready to say that, yeah, they're just, they'll be fine there. But I do think there is something to be said for the compete level of their guards and wings when guys are getting into those mid-range shots. But I would not use Caleb Wilson as the the measuring stick there because he's a stud.
Yeah, and those Caleb Wilson shots, I don't even think you were trying to prevent those or force those. It's just kind of
Is
like he's a
when
great player. He's going to get to his spot, and that's an unguardable shot when a kid is 6'10" with touch like that.
Yeah.
Those are less frustrating. Honestly, I'll give him those. It's more frustrating, like you're alluding to, where guards like UMB's C's ilk are, you know, breaking down a guy off of a scramble to a two dribble uncontested jumper. Because the data around mid range, yes, it is very inefficient points per possession as opposed to a layup or a 3-point shot. But they're also typically the most contested shots. They're not hard shots, though.
Yeah.
Every player that can play D1 probably can make a mid range jump shot when left alone. So it's not a shot. I know the analytics say invite it, but you want to invite difficult ones, not bunnies, which I think I'm a little worried is what they're doing.
I want to touch really quickly on the zone because I guess my question for you on the zone is what the hell? What is
It's
that thing?
it's a means to protect Julius. I think that's literally the only reason they're playing it. I think if they had Vince and Julius, they'd be playing 95% man and it would look so
Yeah.
much better on that end. It was really good against Clemson because in that moment I don't think Clemson was prepared for it, and you also kind of maximized this game scenario in which KJ was allowed to gamble and he
Yeah.
was ending a lot of possessions by himself, but yeah, they're getting carved up. I'm assuming it's going to be betrayed the minute Vince is back, but I don't know what it
I'm
looks like until then.
I think that's right. There's also a part of me, and I'm next time we get a chance to talk to Ed, this is a question that I'm going to ask about why. I got to figure out a way to ask it, but why are they playing those wing defenders so high up in the zone, giving
Well, you
up that automatic corner three just with any overload?
Well, how I'd ask it is, are there areas of the zone in which you're trying to funnel the basketball to?
Yeah,
Because in your last 4 games, opponents have taken 22 shots from that left 3-point area,
yeah,
and they've made 14.
wide open. It's just a wide open shot.
And UNC actually missed a bunch.
Yeah,
UNC was like 4 for 11. Over the course of Dayton, UMBC, and Miami, I think they were 9 of 11 from that spot. And you were just,
UMBC ate them alive from there.
I'm not saying you're funneling the ball there because they're definitely not, but it seems when that zone loses concentration, it's an overextension of those wing guys to the perimeter,
Yeah,
which just surrenders the corner. And I think if there was an alteration to be made there, it's just flatten out that bottom three and
yeah.
ask your 2 guards up top, just ask a ton of them. It's, if you're playing KJ, you're going to ask too much of KJ no matter what, but there's no good solution. They don't have the personnel to play a great zone.
Yeah.
And they don't execute it, but I would agree with you that I'd much rather get beat at the top of the key or off penetration or off a team finding a way to get the ball to the nail and breaking you down from there than them swinging the ball around the 3-point line like a shell drill and ending up with a practice jump shot.
What'd you think of Langston? I will say I thought I've been really, we'll put it this way. I've, in all the time that I've seen Langston, both a little bit in practice, traveling, and in the games that he's played, I've been really impressed with his attention and focus and energy. I can imagine that as a guy who's coming into the year hurt again, feeling like, man, this is just not my, just feeling beat down by that. And I think he's been really engaged with the team. I think he plays hard. He tries defensively, even though he may not have the physical motor or the the skills to play on that end. It was nice to see him in this game, see the ball go down a little bit, gets to double digits for the first time as a Georgetown Hoya. I was concerned that his legs were just gone, and they're certainly not where they once were, but he looked good to me in this one. And on rewatch, he looks like a high major player, which he has been. But this was the first time I think I really thought, oh yeah, that's Langston Love.
Yeah, promising performance from him. He plays with activity, although I think he's just limited what his body allows him to do, like you alluded to. He really needs a game. I know we only have 2 bye games left, but he needs a game where
It just
he
goes
makes
for
4 or
30.
5 threes, scores 18 points in a game we win,
Yeah.
and he gets to smile and laugh and like enjoy basketball again, because you can see him out there, like even yesterday when he played well, like he's pressing,
Yeah.
where he's just like hoping things are gonna go his way, and it still doesn't look real fluid or real free. And he probably doesn't feel like he really fits in with the group yet, because what the heck is his role? He didn't get the opportunity to play with these guys in the summer or in the lead ups to the season.
Yeah.
But they need him now. I think there's evidence now that Kayvon is probably not the solution. Those minutes that Vaughn got, where he was allowed to jack with freedom, I'm gonna guess those are Langston's minutes now.
I feel cautiously optimistic, and maybe I'm dreaming here, that your next 2 non-conference games and your next game is going to be in McDonough, in perhaps, I mean, I'm not sure if the students will be there or not, but perhaps in a better environment than in the one. I would put a little bit on a Langston Love kind of breakout game, maybe here against St. Peter's coming up, where he gets hot from 3. I looking back at the game against UNC, he had the really nice and one finish off of the pass from, I think it was either Julius or Malik. He had the nice offensive rebound and then got back to the right side for the layup. Couple of threes that looked good. He made the one, was on the line for the other, missed another. It's starting to come though.
Yeah, he just needs reps. Again, he needs some things to break in his favor. I'd play him out a lot on Saturday. And I think the solution, at least especially in these next 4 or 5 games without Vince, is really not play. I really just want to ditch the zone. I want to play small. I want to play man to man, and I want to spread things out. And if you want to play small and spread things out, he's pretty critical to doing that successfully. And I'd give him the opportunity to in the next few.
Let's take a look now at, as we transition, hopefully team gets a chance to reset, regroup. I think they need the week off. I mean, we've talked about the injuries that they've had, but guys have been beat up at points during this last game. Jeremiah, obviously, I still don't know if Jeremiah dislocated his shoulder and then played immediately. I find that hard to believe just because of how painful that would be. But either way, he looks like he took a really, really hard hit to that shoulder, kept playing. KJ, something was up there, either, took a hit and he had to get checked out. Isaiah Abraham had to get checked out for the second game in a row. They're beat up a little bit right now, so they need the week off to get right, I think. But then St. Peter's, and then 2 sneaky, important conference games that are not going to do much to bolster your resume, but if you lose them, they might absolutely crater you. In away at Marquette, which we could spend hours talking about what's going on over at Marquette, and then home against Xavier. What are you looking to for those first two Big East games?
Well, right now they're both quad 3 games. So yes, they are an opportunity to crater you if you don't win. I do think it's really unfortunate that what feels like now the two biggest games this season you are going to play without Vince. However, there were two teams minus DePaul that I'd want to match up with in the league without Vince. It's these two. Marquette's just not very good offensively this year. Their shot diet's really weird. They don't take a lot of threes, yet they don't have a lot of big guys that are scoring at the rim. Their guards are the ones really trying to get to the rim and get closer looks, and they do it well. Nigel James and the freshman and Chase Ross are two really good players, but it doesn't lend itself to a ton of efficiency. And they really have gotten much and nothing from the center position, which is good for you because that may be your kryptonite right now. Never going to be easy to win at Fiserv, but Marquette's pretty much 0-4 in their serious games this year with a lot of bad luck at the end of games, losing to Oklahoma and Dayton right at the end. And it's really an aptitude test of like who's reeling more right now.
Yeah.
Both teams can't get anything to go their way the last few weeks. And I think the more desperate team is going to win that one. But again, personnel wise, there's nothing there that says, oh shit, we're really up against it. Now, Xavier is dissimilar to Marquette in that they're playing well now, as
Mhm.
opposed to how they played at the beginning of the season. They beat Cincinnati at home, but I think Cincinnati is a really good matchup for them. It sounds weird because Cincinnati on paper is a lot more talented than them, but Cincinnati's offense has been like disgustingly bad, and
Yeah.
their defense has been very good. They're very long on that end, and I think where Xavier is going to be undone against real teams, it remains to be seen whether we're a real team, is that they're just going to have a really hard time defending the 2-point land.
Yep.
They've pretty much gone to this kid, Milicevic, who was a New Mexico transfer, to be their stretch 5, and he's a stretch 5. He's kind of a strong, stocky kid, but he wants to play on the perimeter offensively, and defensively, he doesn't do much in the way of protecting the rim at all. Opponent shoots 72% at the rim when he's out there. They're really asking Trey Carroll, who's their stretch 4-man, kind of do it all perimeter and interior scorer from Florida Atlantic to provide some means of rim protection. And, that's not all that great. So I do think in both case scenarios, versus both Marquette and versus Xavier, you can play man-to-man defense. You can maybe get away with minutes of Ford at the 5 because both teams' big men, especially when Marquette plays Gold at the 5 and when Xavier plays Milicevic at the 5, are going to just try to stretch that 5-man out to the perimeter.
Yeah.
And I do think Fort has the athleticism to at least manage assignments like that. But yeah, it's both of them are going to be ugly games. Both of them you have to really show up physically. Big East games are never going to be a cakewalk, and you really need them because if you end up 1-4 in the non-Vince stretch leading up to New Year's, or God forbid 0-5, the tournament hopes are gone.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds dramatic, but they really are. You're going to need 13 wins in the Big East, and these two are probably two of the worst 4 teams right now. They have to be candidates for sweeps, and you have to start well.
I think you're at a point where you need 13 wins in the Big East to make the tournament. That's where you're at. We said that was a likely scenario going into the year, 8-3 through NonCon and needing 12, 13 wins, depending on how that NonCon went. The Dayton game changes everything. And so to get to those 13 wins, you need to beat DePaul twice. You need to beat, I don't know what you do with Seton Hall now because Seton Hall may be the 3rd best team in the Big East. I don't think they are, but they deserve some respect. So you can't count on a sweep against Seton Hall right now. You need to probably sweep both Marquette and Xavier for the two other candidates there, as you said, to get to 7 wins. And then you're going to have to pick off your home games against Villanova, Butler. That gets you to 9. and then you're gonna have to try and beat UConn or St. John's at home and maybe steal one on the road.
Yeah, it feels like a really uphill battle because I think 3 through 11 in the Big East is going to be a lot of carnage.
Yeah,
It's not like years past where there's maybe a layup 4 or 6 wins. We were also those
one of
layups,
them. Yeah,
but yeah, I would pool us right now without Vince, probably in that bottom 5 teams with DePaul, Xavier, Marquette, us, and Providence. I
oh, I forgot
think
about Creighton and Providence too.
Creighton, yeah, I don't know what to think about Creighton. They're in another situation like us where it's pretty obvious Freeman is not healthy
Yeah,
and they don't have a serious center rotation and they don't have the athletes to make up for it at all. And it's just tough sledding. But let's pool us with Providence when there's no Vince. I think when you do have Vince, you're probably in that 3 through 5 bundle. I just don't know who the other teams are. Butler's impressed me, even though they lost to Boise State. Villanova's impressed me, even though they haven't played anybody. Seton Hall's impressed me. But I do think Seton Hall's teams are going to get Seton Hall because I'm unclear of how talented they actually are. And the Big East is going to be very aware as to how Holloway wants to play. But yeah, if you map it out, it's probably you got to win at very minimum 6, more likely 7 against the Providence, Xavier, DePaul, and Marquette quartet. You've got to do a little bit better than 500 in the Creighton, Villanova, Seton Hall, Butler quartet, and then you got to win one off of St. John's or UConn. And the unfortunate thing is, I think on paper, the most realistic one of those to win would be at home versus St. John's. And you might be playing that without Vince or limited Vince.
yeah.
And as I've alluded to, I think that's somewhat of a death sentence for this team.
Well, you can only win the game in front of you. They've got St. Peter's coming up. I do think there is another scenario in which they sweep Providence and beat UConn at home, which I think is
Yeah, I mean, there's so many games left to play. Anything can happen. If you
for
get
sure.
if you Vince back at the new year, you're in short order, you might be the same team you were against Clemson, who's looking very much like a top 30 team in the country.
Yeah,
You just can't die in the stretch you lose them. You had to just tread water until
yeah,
you got him back, and you've had 3 high major or non-bye games without him, and you're 0-3, so you're drowning.
yep. Um, Mostly I just wanted to put my stake in the ground that they're sweeping Providence, and I think Ed Cooley's gonna work some Ed Cooley magic against Danny Hurley. But we'll spend some more time looking at the Big East. I do think one of my biggest questions going forward is what is Seton Hall?
I
Because
like him.
do you?
I know you like him less than me, but I do. I think
There's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on.
I know, but I think they do a lot of the things that we thought we were gonna do,
Yeah, that's
where
true.
they really defend, and they've got 40 minutes of a center rotation that really protects the rim
Yeah,
in Payne and Hines. And they just make it really hard for the other team. And if again, they're like what I used to say, what I was saying about us. If you show up and execute and match their physicality, you should have better guys to beat them.
yeah,
But it's easier said than done.
yeah. I think that's right. I just I watched a lot of that K-State game, and my God, K-State is a garbage fire of a team.
Yeah, they're bad. I mean, they beat Kansas State. That's just a Tang mercenary group that looked good the first 2 weeks of the season because they were shooting like 60% from 3,
Yeah,
and that's really come back down to earth. The Wazoo team they beat is bad. The NC State team they beat, I think, is going to be good in
yeah.
time,
It's just
but they
early for them.
definitely got them on a good day, traveling basically across the world to go play that.
Yeah,
And I don't think the USC team that they played to the wire is any good either. But they show up. There's literally zero doubt in how hard they're going to play on a given night.
yeah, yeah. They do remind me a lot of the way that we talked about Georgetown early in this season. And to be fair, when Georgetown has had all of their guys the way that Georgetown has played. So hopefully the Hoyas can get back to that. We've got, as I said, St. Peter's at McDonough. That'll be fun to see what McDonough will look like and actually get a chance to ask coach and others about the McDonough of it all.
It might look bad, just a warning, because
Great.
students are going to be gone,
Oh,
and
good. Good.
I don't know if Georgetown's alumni base is just not really in DC.
Yeah.
It's mostly in New York. That's going to be right around the holidays.
Yeah. They got to get some like high schools out to that or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Every local kid out.
Yeah.
But it's kind of sad that you're thinking of like, how can we fill a 2,000 capacity high school gym?
Yeah. It is only 2,000 instead of the 20,000 that they'd have to fill at Capital One. All right. St. Peter's, Marquette right after that. Really important stretch for Georgetown to, as you say, tread water, get Vince back, get healthy, and turn towards the Big East season. We'll have it all here on the Finger Whack podcast. Jake, any final thoughts from you?
An opportunity to tread water, but also an opportunity to get up and fight back. You
Get
know,
better.
if
Yep.
you nut up and you win both these games, like it's like another life. It's a dodge bullet. It's you get to walk back into the last 18 games of that Big East play saying like, all right, you know, destiny's back in our hands. And I just hope they fight for that.
Yeah.
They got to be desperate and they got to be well prepared and they've got to really execute in those two, the Marquette and Xavier games. That is
Yeah.
running out of time early in the season, which sounds crazy to say.
Yeah. As you said, it's, you got 30 games and we're through just about almost 10 of them now. So you're almost through a third of the season. I will say I kind of like that they've got St. Peter's and Coppin State thrown in there, particularly for guys like Langston Love and maybe a Seal who might get an opportunity to show some minutes and get some legs under him in a less high stakes environment. You'd like to see them kind of run these bye games out of the gym a little bit more than they have, but I'm not as concerned about that, but I do think it's nice to have a little bit of a reset here against St. Peter's before you have a really, really big one away at Marquette, where, as you said, the more desperate team is going to win that one. And I can't imagine how anybody could be more desperate than Marquette, which is a tough place to go win.
Yeah. If I could say one thing though, yeah, yes, you should be extremely desperate in that environment if you're Marquette, but they're almost at the point where their season might already be gone, and kids might already be quitting or at least losing a little bit of belief in that Shaka we retain, we develop, our culture is bulletproof type thing.
Yeah.
So you never know. But yes, both those teams absolutely need that game to be serious moving forward.
I will say the Big East season, while I don't think it's going to produce a lot of tournament basketball teams, it is going to produce a lot of drama. There are
Oh,
some teams that are absolutely just on the brink of complete disaster, annihilation. You've got Marquette doing that whole thing, the Shaka experience, the no transfers. You've got Providence, whatever's going on in Providence. I thought Providence was going to spontaneously combust when they were down, I think, double digits to URI early in that one. They came back and won that game, which I think might
and
have
played well.
saved. Yeah, they played well, but it definitely, second half, probably saved Kim English's job for now. I'm hearing some stuff about St. John's that could just be rumors, but they certainly have not looked the team that I thought they would be.
I mean,
Creighton isn't
you
up
can
there.
well, yeah, the Creighton storyline might be is McDermott done and handing this off to Huss. The
Yep.
Georgetown storyline is Cooley leaves a perfectly good situation in Providence for Georgetown, and in year three, they're very much on the outside looking into the tournament. And to compile or to add on to all of that is I think 3 through 11, and you could even lump St. John's in that now with the kind of the way they played.
Yeah.
Anybody can beat anybody.
Yep.
And in the end, I think it's really going to hurt the tournament or the league's standing in the tournament because there's not going to be there's very likely not going to be 4 or 5 teams that become 14-win teams and separate themselves from the rest of the group. And it's going to be, for lack of a better word, just carnage, where you're going to end up with a lot of teams right around that 10-10 mark, which will make for a dramatic season, but also likely a disappointing selection Sunday for the league.
And you just hope that Georgetown is on the top of that heap of carnage when it's all said and done.
Yeah, it as every season entails when you're not the most talented, you need things to go your way.
So far, it has not.
No, and that's kind of been a staple of Georgetown basketball for a long time. But
Yep. It's got to break our way at some point.
averages.
All right. Well, we'll get out of here and have more coverage from Finger Wag. Jake, thank you as always. Hoya Saxa.
Of course, Hoyas Axel. Let's go win a few.
Let's do it.